It was the winter of 1996. Nanjing, a quiet university city, suddenly became the scene of one of the most gruesome crimes in China's history. Plastic bags began appearing across the city, at drainage canals, in narrow alleys, in roadside trash heaps. Inside was not garbage, but human remains. Residents recoiled in horror and called the police. When authorities arrived, they were stunned. Fragments of bone, flesh, and skin dumped like discarded waste. They belonged to a young woman. As forensic experts pieced the body back together, a chilling truth emerged. It had been cut into nearly 2,000 fragments.
Some pieces had been boiled. Internal organs were missing. And then the victim's name was revealed: Diao Aiqing, a 19-year-old student at Nanjing University. A diligent student, a quiet girl, now the victim of the most grotesque dismemberment the city had ever seen. This was not just a murder, it was a collective nightmare, a shadow that has haunted Nanjing for nearly 3 decades, with questions that remain unanswered to this day. The victim. Who was Diao Aiqing? Her name was Diao Aiqing. She was born in 1976 in the rural countryside of Jiangsu province. Her family lived a modest life. Her parents worked tirelessly, laboring day after day, believing that education was the only path their children could take to escape poverty. As the youngest daughter, Aiqing carried not only her own dreams, but the dreams of her entire family. In 1995, she was admitted to Nanjing University, one of the most prestigious and respected universities in China. It was the kind of achievement that changed everything. For her parents, it was a victory worth every sacrifice. For her neighbors back home, her name became a source of admiration. Proof that even a girl from a small village could step through the gates of a great university. But despite her achievement, she was not the type of student who stood out on campus. Classmates described her as quiet, even shy. She was small in stature, reserved in personality, and often kept to herself. While others joined activities or social groups, Aiqing preferred the solitude of her dormitory. She spent her evenings reading under the dim, yellow light of her desk lamp, writing notes, studying carefully. She was not a girl of drama or conflict. She was not rebellious nor reckless. In fact, she seemed to embody everything safe, ordinary, and unthreatening. A quiet daughter, a diligent student, with a whole future still waiting for her. But in January of 1996, during the winter break, that quiet life came to an abrupt and unexplained end. On the night of January 10th, she vanished. Her books remained neatly stacked on the desk. Her personal belongings were untouched. Her clothes still hung in the closet. She left no letter, no phone call, no trace. Her friends assumed she had gone home. Her family believed she was still in her dormitory. For days, both sides lived in the comfort of false assumptions. No one realized she was already gone. And that in just over a week, her name, Diao Aiqing, would become forever associated with one of the most horrifying unsolved crimes in modern Chinese history. The discovery, when Nanjing awoke in horror. January the 19th, 1996, a cold winter morning in Nanjing. Snow still clung to the pavement, the air damp and grey. People hurried to work, to the market, unaware that in just a few hours, their city would be consumed by a nightmare. Around 7 a.m., a local man walking near a quiet road spotted a black plastic bag lying half buried in the snow, leaking a dark liquid. Assuming it was trash, he opened it. Inside was something that froze his blood, a piece of human flesh. He screamed, ran, and called the police. Within minutes, the area was sealed off. Officers arrived, shaken by what they saw, but the horror was only beginning. That same morning, more reports flooded in. Another bag found near a drainage canal filled with human bones. At a public dump, sanitation workers discovered heavy bags stuffed with flesh. In a narrow alley, a stray cat tore open a bag, revealing human fingers. The city erupted in fear. People whispered of the body in the garbage bags. Police expanded their search, dividing into teams to comb through every street, every dumpster, every drainage ditch. The scenes resembled a horror film. Officers in masks and rubber gloves bent over, lifting leaking plastic bags that dripped dark fluids. Crowds of residents gathered silently, watching as vans filled with evidence pulled away, not evidence of theft or robbery, but the remains of a human life, sliced apart. Day after day, more discoveries followed. Police vans returned with dozens, then hundreds of fragments. In the forensic lab, doctors laid them out piece by piece on cold steel tables. One bag contained a hand, another a cluster of bones, another
only a patch of human skin. By the end, they had recovered nearly 2,000 fragments. Even veteran forensic experts shuddered at the number. Reconstruction began. Slowly, the pieces revealed the truth. The remains belonged to a young woman who had disappeared from her dormitory less than 2 weeks earlier. Her name was Diao Aiqing, a 19-year-old student at Nanjing University. Her death was not random, it was calculated. Forensic reports revealed the cuts were sharp, clean and precise, as though made by someone skilled in anatomy. Some parts of the body had been boiled, most of her internal organs were missing.
And this was no ordinary murder. This was an attempt to erase humanity itself, to dismantle a young woman into thousands of unrecognizable fragments and scatter her across a city. Nanjing was paralyzed with fear. Citizens whispered in terror. Newspapers screamed the headline, "A nightmare in Nanjing." And this was only the beginning. Investigation. The hunt for a killer. The discovery of nearly 2,000 fragments forced Nanjing police into one of the largest criminal investigations the city had ever seen. Streets were blocked, garbage was sifted through, canals were drained, and neighborhoods searched house by house. But the brutality of the crime made the investigation nearly impossible from the start. The killer had reduced the body to pieces so small that almost all forensic traces had been erased. No fingerprints, no identifiable marks, no clear weapon. The crime scene wasn't one place, it was the entire city of Nanjing. Police built their timeline. Diao Aiqing was last seen on the evening of January 10th, leaving her dormitory during winter break. After that moment, she vanished without a trace. Investigators turned to those who knew her. Classmates described her as quiet, shy, and without enemies. Professors remembered a diligent student, not the type to invite trouble. Her family was devastated, unable to comprehend how their daughter, who seemed to live such a safe and ordinary life, could meet such an end. Theories began to emerge. Some experts believed the precision of the cut suggested medical training, a surgeon, a professor, a student of anatomy, someone who knew the human body well enough to dismantle it efficiently. Others believed this was the work of a sadist, a sexual deviant. The boiling of certain parts, the removal of internal organs, it was not simply to dispose of evidence, it was ritualistic, perverse,
and obsessive. And still others whispered about revenge. Had Diao Aiqing crossed paths with someone who bore a grudge, someone who wanted not only to kill her, but to obliterate her entirely? Police interviewed hundreds of students, professors, and staff at Nanjing University. They searched dorm rooms, checked alibis, and tried to trace movements on the night she disappeared. Yet every lead dissolved into nothing. No one admitted to seeing her leave. No one noticed anything unusual. It was as if she had walked out into the night and been swallowed whole. The mid-1990s offered little technological help.
There were no surveillance cameras on campus, no DNA databases to cross-check. fingerprint technology was limited. In many ways, the killer had chosen the perfect time in history to vanish. Meanwhile, the city itself was unraveling. Parents pulled their daughters from school. Students refused to walk alone at night. Streets that once buzzed with youthful energy were now haunted by whispers and fear. The newspapers called it the Nightmare of Nanjing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The task force that once filled entire office floors began to shrink. Leads grew cold, files piled high, and gathered dust. In the end, no suspect was arrested, no charges were filed, and the person who cut Diao Aiqing into thousands of pieces simply disappeared into silence. For her family, the investigation's failure was unbearable. They buried what could be recovered of her body, but no peace was given. For the city, the unsolved case became a scar, proof that sometimes even the most monstrous crimes leave no trail. Nearly 3 decades later, the file remains open. But with every passing year, the likelihood of justice fades. And the killer, he could be dead, he could be alive, he could be walking among the crowd, unnoticed, carrying the secret of what he did that winter in 1996. The silence is his victory. And the silence is Nanjing's curse. Ending the silence that remains. Nearly 30 years have passed. The case file of Diao Aiqing still lies there, thick, dusty, unresolved. Her family never learned the truth. Her friends never understood why someone so quiet, so ordinary, was condemned to such a fate. Nanjing has changed. The city is brighter, taller, more modern than ever, but in its collective memory, a shadow remains, a shadow with the name Diao Aiqing. The killer was never caught. Perhaps he is dead. Perhaps he lives unnoticed among the crowd, or perhaps he never left. His silence is a torture that has stretched across decades. Some wounds never heal. And the murder of Diao Aiqing is one such wound, a scar carved into the history of Nanjing, a question that has never been answered.